Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening, depending on your time zone and depending on when you are watching this. It is Wednesday, the 27th of May, 2020, halfway through the working week. The weekend is back in sight. I'm James Innes, and this is my YouTube show, The Jobs Guru. It's very lovely indeed to see you here for today's episode, but please do think about subscribing so that you don't miss out on the next episode. In today's show, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest jobs, career and employment news. I will, as always, be covering a question from one of my viewers, a particularly interesting one this time, I think. I'll be talking about the Equality Act of 2010. I'll be examining prospects for school leavers and graduates, which, to be quite frank, are going to be particularly crappy for some time to come. And next in the interview question series, we'll be finding out which 3 celebrities you would like to join you for a night out. If you have any questions or comments as you watch, then do please let me have them below. And if you like what you see, then do please hit that YouTube thumbs up. First, as usual, I've had a good read of all the main news headlines, and in particular the workplace, jobs, careers, and employment-related headlines. I just can't believe the same story is dominating the headlines again today. That's 5 days in a row now. Desperate Dom, they're calling him. I'm not saying he's in the right or in the wrong. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just going to say that I think anyone would feel pretty desperate after this degree of persecution. Have we forgotten about Caroline Flack so quickly? Or maybe Mr. Cummings is different because he's in politics and male, and therefore fair game? Anyway, now for something completely different. It is, shall we say, a slow day for workplace news today. Everyone's far more interested in lynching a certain public figure. The headline news in the FT's Work and Careers section is, "What is the future for universities?" In the Guardian's Work and Careers section, we have "Reversing the Brain Drain, Why Coronavirus Could Stop Graduates Moving to London." Slightly more interesting. Perhaps the biggest headline I saw elsewhere was the news that supercar and Formula One racing business McLaren has become the first British automaker to unveil coronavirus job cuts after announcing that more than a quarter of its workforce will be axed, well over 1,000 people. Even as this pandemic is hopefully receding, we could still see wave after wave of redundancies and indeed firms collapsing completely. Some of the first victims of the collapse include airlines. The recent government bailout money covers only a small fraction of their losses. Energy, cruise operators, restaurants, hotel and travel, retail chains, private equity, real estate. Next, as some individuals, consumers and businesses inevitably start to default on loans and mortgages, we could potentially see failures of banks, insurance companies, other financial institutions. But let's hope not, yeah? Anyway, the story that I found the most interesting today comes from James Titcomb in The Telegraph. Swiss company ordered to pay towards rent of employee working from home. Well now, what's gone down here then? Basically, the undisclosed business was ordered to pay a little over £100 a month for each month that a former employee, disgruntled employee, for the company and worked from his or her rented property. An interesting ruling, and one which comes at an interesting time, not just with a view to people who have already been working from home during lockdown, but thinking ahead to those for whom working from home may become the new normal. The company had argued that the employee would have had to pay the rent anyway, didn't rent the property with a view to working from home, and that no compensation for a home office had been agreed in advance. But the court wasn't having any of that. And this could obviously open the door to a wave of demands, couldn't it? So how do I feel about this? Well, it's tricky. As an employer, I can certainly see it from the company's point of view. As an individual, I can certainly see it from the employee's point of view. I think the point I'd like to make here is that if you are self-employed and working from home, then you are allowed to make a tax deduction in respect of using part of your home for that purpose. Would you have had to pay the full cost of your property anyway? Maybe, maybe not. But you can still make that deduction. Did you perhaps take on a larger property with a specific view to working from home? Quite possibly. So, complicated, isn't it? My advice? Do bring it up with your employer, yes, if you're not self-employed, of course, and see what they have to say about it. But do go about it gently, tactfully, diplomatically. Now is not the time to be rocking the boat. Most employers are struggling enough as it is. Do bear that in mind. So, on to that question from one of my viewers. Today's question has been sent in by Stephen, age 30 apparently, from Trowbridge in Wiltshire. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Trowbridge. He says, "Dear James, I was born with a large cyst on the brain and have a tube which runs down from the side of my skull down to my stomach to drain the fluid. I was constantly behind at school and had to be self-taught to learn to read and write again after I collapsed, age 13, which was a struggle. I didn't go to college. In the past, I've had part-time work, usually 1 or 2 days a week, as a kitchen assistant, a checkout or retail assistant. Most recently, in 2015, I was a steward for a security company. However, I have never been able to gain full-time employment and hate being unemployed. I am always honest about my medical condition during the interview, but I find that I never get any response or feedback from then on. Are they dismissing my ability to work because of this? How do I get round it? I would love to get back into the work environment and make an honest living. Well, Stephen, gosh, certainly a very interesting question. I think first of all I have to say that honesty is not always the best policy. I'm certainly not suggesting you should lie, but you need to be aware that you are not required to disclose that you have a cerebral shunt, nor should you. I obviously don't have your full medical file in front of me, but whilst your condition certainly, had a very detrimental impact on your education, I'm presuming that now it has no what's known as negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. And so you're not considered disabled under the terms of the Equality Act 2010. Either way, employers are not supposed to discriminate, but we all know that plenty do. And I'm sure you're more than aware that plenty of people will find your condition hard to understand. And humans are so often scared by they don't understand. It's in our nature. So don't bring up your medical history. It's not relevant. And don't bother detailing your education or lack of on your CV. Instead, focus on having a what's known as a functional CV, a term, a stereotype I don't like very much. It's very limiting, but I think you know what I mean by that. Detailing the broad range of skills you've acquired, rather than drawing attention to the somewhat checkered nature of your career so far by using a traditional or chronological CV. And how about, particularly at the moment, looking for some volunteering opportunities to boost your CV? I spoke about that in the show just the other day. If you're lacking in recent work experience, then do give strong consideration to volunteering. It can make a huge difference to your CV and to your overall employability. Now, I am always open to interesting new questions from my viewers, so if you have a workplace, jobs, careers, or employment-related question for me, then do please type it into that comment section below, and I may well feature it in a future episode of the show. And if I do, then one of my limited edition collector's item Jobs Guru coffee mugs will be yours. You know you want one. Plonk. So, each day, as well as answering one viewer's specific question, like Stephen's here, I also look into a specific issue which has been raised by a number of different viewers, and today, actually leading quite neatly on from Stephen's question, I shine my spotlight on the Equality Act of 2010. The Equality Act of 2010. Sounds sexy, doesn't it, yeah? No, it doesn't. It sounds really rather boring, but it represents the best piece of anti-discrimination legislation this country has ever seen. Okay, I admit that doesn't really sound very exciting or sexy either, but let me explain, because I have had a number of questions about this, in particular following on from yesterday's show when I highlighted that it's now been 50 years since the introduction of the Equal Pay Act in 1970, a piece of legislation which was ultimately repealed, but whose substantive provisions were replicated within this Equality Act of 2010 in Part 5, Chapter 3, to be precise. Yes, I am showing off. In a nutshell, the Equality Act is designed to combat discrimination in employment on grounds of gender, including special protections for pregnant women, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, age, disability, race, religion, or belief. We've come a long way in the past few decades when it comes to tackling discrimination, but we're still far from eradicating this. We all know that. The important thing from your point of view is to know your rights under the Equality Act of 2010. And if you feel you have been discriminated against, make sure you take appropriate action, if not least in support of others. So now, on to the main topic I wish to discuss with you today. This choice of topic was inspired by an article I saw in the Times. Employers have duty to give jobs to Generation COVID, say business chiefs. In a nutshell, current prospects for school leavers and graduates are particularly crappy. I shall elaborate. The Resolution Foundation think tank uses the term Corona Class of 2020 to describe it's not far off a million, 800,000 or so school leavers and graduates due to join the labour market, the job market this summer. But their futures look decidedly uncertain as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that's had a catastrophic impact on the economy and indeed the education sector. Many graduates and non-graduates have traditionally landed their first post-education jobs in sectors such as retail, hospitality, travel and leisure, arguably the sectors which have been hit hardest by the lockdown that the pandemic has necessitated. This puts them at a much higher risk of initial unemployment, as well as having potentially long-term ramifications, including reduced pay and limited long-term job prospects. There have been calls for the government to offer incentives to young people to encourage them to remain in education to counteract this, such as a maintenance support scheme. However, the possibility that social distancing measures may need to remain in place for many months to come has led to some universities, like Cambridge, making the unprecedented decision to move all lectures online for the academic year beginning in September. The University Watchdog has stated that students applying for university places have the right to be told exactly how courses will be taught at their chosen university before they make their choice for the autumn term. And with the campus experience being such an important part of university life for many students, researchers have estimated that 1 in 5, 20% of students may defer the start of their studies if the majority of teaching will be done online. That's about nearly 250,000, potential 230,000 fewer students enrolling. And if this happens, the consequences for university finances could be catastrophic. Domestic students face annual university fees of up to 10 grand. Universities top up their income with fees for accommodation as well as higher costs for overseas students, reported to reach a staggering £58,600 per annum. Across the sector, we could be looking at a total decline in tuition fees of £2.5 billion was the figure. Potential job losses of up to 30,000. And even the closure of some universities, the deferral rates come close to those estimated figures. Set this against a backdrop of universities already struggling due to increasing pension costs, the exorbitant costs of replacing outdated properties, and fees that have been fixed at the background level of general inflation, as well as many students now clamouring for refunds on the fees already paid for the 2019-2020 academic year, and the future for many universities does look bleak. So perhaps that earlier headline wasn't too boring, actually. There's the FT one, wasn't it? I simulated a yawn there. Okay, they do have a point. It's just the headline itself could have been a bit more inspiring, couldn't it? But it's the FT. Anyway, the UK is obviously not alone in facing this potential crisis. The higher education sector in the US and Australia also relies heavily on financing received from international students, including from Asia. A recent study found that pretty much half of international students from China would choose to defer the start of their courses if teaching moved online. There's a great deal of prestige associated with having studied at an international university, and there is, of course, the fear that this will impact their future career prospects. Whilst it's highly unlikely there'll be a sector-wide influx of financial support from the government, just as many businesses have support individual assistance, it is anticipated that some universities may also appeal for bailouts, obviously. The potential alternatives include dramatic austerity levels, mergers, rationalisation of higher education providers, and a more widespread move towards online, distance and blended learning. Whatever happens, the immediate future for the Corona class of 2020, as they call it, looks very uncertain, and it can and doubtless will have very serious long-term ramifications. I wish I had some good news to report on this front, but I'm just telling it like it is here. As always, viewers, I would really welcome any comments, thoughts, questions, ideas, feedback you may have in the comment section below. Please, love to hear from you. And whoever writes my favourite comment of the week, this is a new thing I'm introducing, my favourite comment of the week, the writer of that will become the proud owner of, no, not a limited edition collector's item Jobs Guru mug, no, that's for sending in the question of the day, no, but a limited edition collector's item Jobs Guru pen. You know you want one. Now, as well as being the founder and chairman of the James Innes Group, which trades in the UK as the CV Centre, I am also the UK's best-selling careers author. Amongst my titles is the Interview Question and Answer book. It is, as they say, available in all good bookshops, or if you'd like a signed copy from yours truly, then just visit www.jamesinnes.group. Anyway, in each episode of my YouTube show, I'm taking questions from that book and looking at how to answer them. And all this week, I'm taking those questions from the chapter I entitled The Top 25 Tough Questions Taking the Heat. So here's today's. Which 3 celebrities would you like to join you for a night out? Similar questions include, who would you like to be left on a desert island with? If you had to choose one, which famous person would you invite to your wedding? Back to the question in hand. Which 3 celebrities would you like to join you for a night out? Often labelled a personality probing question, this sort of question is a light-hearted way, really, for the interviewer to find out a little bit about your approach to life and what you value. It's not that tough, really. The interviewers like to be interested in whatever choices you make, as long as you justify them in positive terms, giving sensible reasons why you would choose them. So, how to answer? Well, actually, let's begin with how not to answer this question. If you feel tempted to list terrorists, serial killers, or models as your 3 celebrities as a joke, then please refrain. It won't be funny. Which reminds me of the joke I made the other day about Hannibal Lecter. Maybe it wasn't funny. Well, made me laugh, but still. Instead, let the nature of the job you're applying for, the personal qualities, professional requirements, and what you know about the organisation, let them determine your choice of celebs. Think of 3 areas that are important for the role, and then think of a suitable celebrity for each. This sort of question is obviously not easy to do on the hoof, but the chances are that you have you should have thought about this at some stage in life, shouldn't you, really? Haven't most of us thought about that sort of thing, come up in conversation? Maybe not, okay. But do think about it now if you're preparing for an interview. And make sure you carefully justify your selection. You can even choose 3 people who are quite closely linked to each other. They don't have to be 3 totally disparate people. You could choose the Queen, Prince Charles, and Prince William if you wanted to. There is no rule which says you have to choose 3 people from 3 totally different walks of life. Now, as usual, I've plucked a little example answer from my book for you, if I can find the right piece of paper here. So, one of the people I admire most, and who also seems very outgoing and approachable, is Sir Richard Branson. There must be so much one could learn from him. So if you're watching Sir Richard, definitely love a night out with you. I'm also a huge sports fan and have always been interested in how successful managers work with their teams. Chelsea's manager, Jose Mourinho, this is probably a bit out of date now, I actually don't follow football at all, but I'm sure this was accurate when I wrote it in the book. He could undoubtedly share some tips on how I can drive the sales team forward. And if he's in a good mood, he can be really funny. I'm assuming this because, I've never met the man and I have no interest in football, but this is an example of reviewers, okay? I would also invite Jamie Oliver, as he is not only a great entrepreneur, but an easygoing guy. But if we decide to stay in rather than go out, then he can do the cooking for us. Yeah, nice conclusion there. Great entrepreneur. I think Jamie Oliver has, again, since I wrote this, fallen on some hard times business-wise, but then so have a lot of people, of course. So, right. I'm currently updating this book, the interview question and answer book. I'm working on a brand new edition, which I wasn't sure the other day which edition it is. I've checked now. It's the 3rd edition it will be. If you've got any interview questions which you think I should be considering for possible inclusion, do please let me know in that comment section below. If I use your question, then obviously there'll be a free signed copy in it for you. So now that is pretty much all for today. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, with the last episode for this week. Remember, this show is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday each, and almost every week. I might take Christmas off, just 2 more things before I sign off. First, the usual but important request. Do please check me out on social media and connect, follow, sign up, etc. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, about the show in general, indeed about life, the universe, the pros and cons of the monarchy, whatever, do please let me have them below. If you like this episode, then do please hit it with the YouTube thumbs up. And if you've kindly given me a thumbs up, then do think about subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on the next episode. If you've already subscribed, remember to ring that bell so you can receive notifications when I upload new episodes. And if you've already rung that bell, well, I love you. I really mean that, I really do. Finally, let me tell you what's happening tomorrow. In Thursday's show, I'll be chatting about a variety of things, including the importance of tailoring your CV and how to adapt your CV for every application. Okay, maybe not the most exciting topic in the world, but an absolutely vitally important one, something that so many people get so wrong, really blowing their chances. And next in the interview question series, I'll be asking, what would you do if the sun died out? Blimey. Okay, I do hope you'll tune in. Thank you for watching today. Keep safe and be well, my friends. Goodbye.